Welcome to today's session of Donuts in Demand. My name is 𝐃𝐸𝐬𝐵. I am the head of marketing here at Goldcast, and I'm just filling in for a couple months while Lindsay's out with her growing family. I'm here to host our amazing demand generation guests and share some tips and tricks on how we can all learn from each other. But before we get started and bring our guests out onto the stage, I want to go through some housekeeping items. Please note that this session is being recorded and we are fully live. And this session will be available on demand later this afternoon. We'll let you know over email as soon as it's ready. So if you need to step away at any point, say around the 30-minute mark, you can easily jump right back in later this evening or afternoon and pick up right where you left off. I want to make this event super community-centric. And so I encourage you to share what's on your mind. Feel free to use the chat on the right-hand side. I see that we've already started. You can use GIFs or GIFs or emojis. You can DM one another if someone's saying some interesting thing in the chat. Also, don't miss out on using our Q&A tab that's also on the right-hand side. This is a great way to engage directly with our guests today by asking a question. And also, in our Donuts in Demand episodes, we always have a giveaway. So in celebration of Valentine's Day, that's tomorrow, we're thrilled to announce a special giveaway. It's going to be a candle. And so if you want to enter to win this candle for tomorrow, simply just engage in the chat, participate in one of the 3 polls that we're going to be pushing out today, and then ask a question. So it's that easy. Do those 3 things, and then you can win your chance for winning this awesome scented candle. All right. Another last thing before I go into today's session is the docs tab. I want to make sure that you take a look at the docs tab. It's also on the right-hand side. We've compiled some valuable resources that's related to today's discussion, so you can easily access them there. And then I'm going to open our very first poll before introducing our guests. So the first poll that I want to know about is, what topics do you want to see in Donuts in Demand this year? If you're trying to learn more about ABM, social media, email, campaign creation, virtual events, or anything else, feel free to vote. That first poll is now open. All right, so now without further ado, let's introduce our guests. First up, we've got Katie Dunn, who is our Senior Demand Gen Manager and Head of Integrated Campaigns at Faus. Hey, Katie.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I am great, excited to be here.
Yeah. Can you give us a very, very quick intro of who you are, where you're at, where you're working, and what sweet treat you have today?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Katie Dunn. I am a Senior Demand Gen Manager here at ThoughtSpot. Not here, you're actually in my home office. I also run our integrated campaigns out of London, England. I'm obviously not English, as you could probably tell by my accent, but I've been here for about 3 years. And fun fact, if you've never been to London, you'd probably not see a lot of classic donut shops. I would die for like a chocolate old fashioned. But unfortunately, they don't have like the classic donut shops here. So I went to the store today, M&S, if there's any English people here on the line, and got some jam tarts. I've actually never had any of these. My partner loves them. He was thrilled that I brought them. So he'll eat these later. But on my way out, I actually saw some sugar donuts. So that's what I have here today. I'm excited I'm really excited to eat these actually, because I haven't had a donut in a long time. So that is me.
Is M&S Marks and Spencer?
Yes, M&S.
I love Marks and Spencer. They have the best.
Yes, I was in there. Valentine's Day is in full swing, and they had the cutest chocolate Highland cow. And I was like, very niche, very cute. So I obviously had to get one of those as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. And we also have Ashley Faus, who's the head of Lifecycle Marketing Portfolio at Atlassian.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Ashley.
I guess I should say good morning and then good afternoon for Katie, since you're in
Right.
London.
How are you, Ashley?
I'm doing good. I also have kind of a twist on this. I actually got a scone because they didn't have donuts when I swung by Starbucks this morning, but that's okay. We've got scones and we're in good shape.
And I'm also joining in on the trend here where donuts aren't happening today because we've got a snowstorm in New England, and I wasn't able to run out and grab my donut this morning. And so I have a donut mouse pad to fill my sweet treat. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that poll and share and see what we've got. So we got a lot of people that want to learn about ABM and campaign creation and virtual events. That's very much in line with what we are all going to be talking about in the series. So thank you for engaging in that poll. All right, so in Donuts in Demand, we have different segments. And so the first segment that we're going to talk about is sprinkles of demand. So let me go in and grab that segment opener. All right, so segments, so sprinkles in demand is really asking our guests to provide bite-sized tips for demand generation success. These could be hot takes or simply tried and true tips that just work. So I'd love to kick it off with Ashley. What kind of wisdom are you going to share with us today?
Sure. So I want to talk about something that I've been very passionate about for quite a while now. And it's this idea that my spicy take on it is the funnel is dead, use a playground instead. And I think that as marketers, we get very focused on mapping content in a way that works for us, in a way that's easy for us to do attribution. It's easy for us to talk about amongst ourselves, but it's not actually representative of the customer journey. And so if we think about a playground, what's the right way to play on a playground? Is it to go slides, then swing, then merry-go-round? Is it to skip the merry-go-round altogether, right? And what about people who are sitting on the park bench, like watching everyone else play? Are they using the playground in the wrong way? And the answer to those questions is, yeah, you can play on any of the different equipment. You can skip them. You can use the equipment in the wrong way. Slides you're supposed to go down them, but like my 3-year-old nephew always wants to go up the slide. He's living his best life when he goes up the slide. And so if we think about that in terms of our audience, what if we could design a journey that was so smart and so delightful that we could engage that audience, whether they want to go up, down, sideways, sit on the park bench and take a little break for a while, and use content in the wrong way. And so some actionable tips to do that. One is to map your content to the audience intent. So I hear this a lot. Everyone thinks that learn intent content is the best. And so they twist it to say that all content is learn intent content. But if you actually drill down and you say, okay, what is this content going to teach you? Oh, it's going to teach you how to use the products. Oh, okay, that's not learn intent content. That's use intent content. Oh, well, it's going to teach people why they should buy the products. Okay, that's not learn intent content. That's buy intent content. Well, it's going to teach them how to fix a problem in the product. Again, that's not learn intent content. That's help intent content or troubleshooting intent content, right? So if we get very clear on our intent, that helps us to then map the content. And then even more tactically, using clear CTAs. So we're not tricking anyone into buying, right? Like, haha, if I get you to learn more, now I can sell you. It's like, what? I'm not trying to buy anything. Again, if I try to convince my nephew that we're not going to go on the slides, we're only going to go on the swings, and he sees the slide right there, he's going to ask me like, Aunt Ashley, why can't I go on the slide? Like you said, there's only swings available, but like I see the slide right there, right? Our audience is like my 3-year-old nephew. I think that's the real takeaway from this episode. So use explicit CTAs, right? Contact sales, read an article, download a PDF, watch a webinar, right? It's very clear what's going to happen when you click that link. And your sales team is going to be happy too, because if someone clicks contact sales, they're not confused about what's about to happen next. Someone is going to reach out to them with buy intent content, and they're actually asking for that. So if someone wants to buy, sell them. Make it easy to buy. If someone doesn't want to buy, don't clog up your pipeline with leads just because they wanted to learn more and got stuck downloading an ebook. So that's the mindset shift from the funnel to the playground, and then 2 tactical ways that you can implement that: intent and clear CTAs.
I love that. I love how the evolution from funnel to playground kind of opened up the B2B marketers' minds to, not everything needs to be a template where it's, awareness, consideration, purchase. It's every company has their own journey. Every person has their own way of going through content and exploring things and creating their own intent. So I love how you use the playground analogy. Katie, what about you? How do you, what are some, bite-sized tips for demand generation?
Yeah, absolutely. First, Ashley introduced me to the playground concept a few weeks ago, and I'm mind blown. Obviously, everyone enters the funnel dead funnel now, at different stages. And that's something really that I was hitting home. And I went immediately after that call, Ashley, I was on a team meeting. I was like, guys, I have to tell you about this. And they're like, yes, this is exactly what we've been trying to portray. And so love that. Definitely mind opening. So my little sprinkle here is that your marketing campaigns are only going to be as successful as your sales team makes them. So how do you, one, gain that alignment, and two, really partner with your sales team to make sure that you're giving them what they need in terms of pipeline, and also you're building pipeline from a marketing perspective, and building that brand awareness and driving that true demand. So clear CTAs is also, I think, in this, so they know what they're getting into, the audience. But I think really how to do this is twofold. So if you're looking at pipeline and you have various different sales stages, is that entry opportunity, and then that opportunity goes into sales accepted opportunity. You may have various different naming conventions. Where is the most significant drop off? Where are you seeing that, and why? Something that we do really great at ThoughtSpot is we actually have, when opportunity is closed at each stage, we have a reason. And so we're looking at that reason and building campaigns based on that reason. And so I'm now looking at that consistently. And so we're really seeing that when the meeting is passed over to the seller, and then the seller takes that additional meeting, that is where we're seeing the drop off. And so we're building content around that to make sure that not only sales is using that content, but we're also able to serve that content at the right time. So that's one. And then just gaining that sales alignment. We have a bi-weekly SDR and AE meeting where I'm talking not only about the campaigns, but hey, what do you guys need from me? Hey, Katie, it's really hard to get through. It's like, okay, great. What kind of direct mail play can we do? Call sequence and something around Valentine's Day, which I'm actually doing in the midst. I was editing an email that the sellers can use tomorrow to go what we call PG Day, so pipe generation. And so I'm arming them with all of those. So those are my sprinkles, if you will.
Awesome. We have a segment later that's going to be dedicated to sales and marketing alignment. So I'm definitely going to pick your brain a little bit more about that later, Katie. But I'm going to go into our second poll. What I want to know is, from our audience, is what stage of the sales funnel does your current demand generation strategy primarily focus on? You can only choose one. So if your strategy, what does your strategy really focus on? Is it focus on awareness, consideration, decision, retention? I know we just talked about killing the funnel, but here I am asking questions about the funnel. So if you can answer that question, we'll take a look and see where we're at. But while you're answering that question, I'm going to go into our next segment, which is about being jelly filled. So this segment is actually dedicated for Katie specifically. All right. So from this segment, what I want to know is, Katie, you're tackling different campaigns and running different programs. What can be spun up on a campaign perspective when pipeline is looking low?
Yes, this is my favorite. I admittedly have done this more times in the last couple of months than I can count, because obviously the macro environment that we're in isn't super friendly for the buying cycle. So one of my favorite things to do is actually involves Goldcast. It's called incentivized webinars. We happen to call them webinar pluses. And really what that means is that you are incentivized to attend and hear for the webinar. And so we offer shoes, gift cards, a cooking class, you name it, we're doing it. And so, gosh, I just heard of one and we're planning one for March 12th. So super excited. And basically what that does is that it's one, encouraging someone to attend, which also goes a very long way. If you're offering, hey, you'll get Hoka's or Nikes on us, that's a pretty large ask and people want running shoes. I mean, I want running shoes. And so we're basically taking that and we're saying, hey, sales, we're going to plan this webinar plus, and we'll give you all of the materials to make you successful. SDRs eat this up. I was actually just on a call with our SDR team earlier this morning, and we announced that we're doing another one. And they were like, Katie, thank you so much for doing this. Like these events are so worth it for us to like drop everything that we're doing because they know that they generate pipeline. So that is something that I always love to do. Obviously, it's a little bit more of a lift. It's going to cost a little bit more, but the return on investment is going to be super, super high. And that's what we're constantly going back to is like, okay, great. And the deals actually do close, which it's important. Obviously, you want to give yourself a pat on the back for the opportunities created, but really what counts here is pipeline and closed won opportunities.
Yeah, very interesting. I love a good incentivized event attendance, but curious to a follow-up question on that program. How do you ensure that there's truly intent, that they're not just there for the Nikes, that they're there to actually consume the content and engage with your brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what I'm doing is I'm pulling lists. We use 6sense internally. So I'm looking at buyer signals like, okay, are you in the consideration stage? And obviously I think in the market in general, 6sense, you need to do your research. Like you can't just take it for face value. If they're like really in the consideration phase, you really need to go and dig deep, but really in looking at it holistically, also doing a re-engagement play. Hey, have you maybe interacted with us in the last like 9 to 12 months, but it wasn't the right time? This is the perfect one to get them back into the pipeline. So really looking at that. And also what I find is pulling the list for sales makes it really, really easy for them to invite. And so we call them PG kits. And it's basically just like a doc. Here are the emails that you need. Here are the cadences in SalesLoft. And here are the reports via 6sense in Salesforce that you can look at to really guide your outbound efforts.
Awesome. If there's any other questions for Katie, do go into the Q&A tab and ask them there so we can go through those questions at the end. But thank you for sharing that. Super interesting. I love programs that get our SDRs and BDRs excited. It brings a whole new level of energy.
Yeah, I love that. I was a previous SDR, gosh, what feels like forever ago. And so I always try to put my hat on, the SDR hat, to see what they need and what they want and kind of put myself in their shoes again, which is, I think, is important in our line of work.
Yeah, totally. All right, so I'm going to share the poll results here to see what we want to be, what the audience here is focused on in their demand gen strategy. So we got a lot of people in the awareness consideration phase, so mostly on the top of the funnel and not so much retention and renewal. Very interesting. Is that in line with what you guys are focused on, Ashley and Katie?
Yes.
I would say so. I think, and this is an interesting debate that's happening in the market as well, the separation between demand creation or generation versus demand capture. And I think at that decision point, it kind of shifts into that demand capture standpoint. Atlassian has both like a product-led growth flywheel type model and also a high touch, like traditional sales-led model. And so at the point where you're getting into that decision phase for those higher sale, multi-million-dollar sales, like usually it's sales that is doing the demand close, which would be your decision point. So yeah, it makes sense that a lot of the folks on this call from a demand gen or demand creation standpoint are talking awareness and consideration.
Awesome. All right, moving on to our next segment. It's called That's Sweet. All right, so this is a segment that's all about showing and telling, where our guests are going to dive into one of their favorite creative campaigns and explain exactly how it worked and why, exactly how and why it worked and why they loved it. So Ashley, I'm going to go to you first. Can you tell us about your sweet campaign today?
Sure. So I want to actually click in on one it kind of started as a little bit of a kerfuffle. And so it's both a turnaround story and a cool campaign story. So a lot of our products are for Agile software teams, and the Agile community is quite passionate about the different principles and the different methodologies and ways of bringing Agile to life. And so one of the things that is used to basically determine how large a project is a concept called story points. And so you assign these story points. And there's some anti-patterns with story points where they basically end up getting turned into traditional estimation methods, which they're supposed to not be that, right? Like it's not just supposed to be about hours or lines of code or whatever, but people sometimes as an anti-pattern are like, yeah, it's this many story points, but they really mean it's this many hours. And you're like, okay, but if we were to be more efficient, or if we were to have more resources, or if we were to focus for a smaller amount of time, or a more focused amount of time, like we could adapt that output. So we were working on some product parity and the ability to use decimal points in story points. And that's actually also an anti-pattern. Like you shouldn't have half a story point, right? But again, a number of our customers use this. And so, you can lead a horse to water and suggest that, hey, maybe you shouldn't be using 0.3 story points or half a story point. But if people want it, that education, you have to meet them where they are. And so something came out basically talking about decimals and story points, and the Agile community freaked out and was like, this is not how you do it. And so one of our product marketers, who is also like a Six Sigma Lean black belt certified, like she's got a lot of certifications, said, you know what? I think we should have a broader discussion about how to use story points for Agile teams. And so she actually went out and brought together several Agile experts. She hosted a roundtable discussion with them, and all of them agreed. They're like, yeah, this is an anti-pattern, but the bigger issue is around estimation. And so when you start talking about story points, that's just one element of how projects come to life. And so here's a few ways that our products, how Jira can help you think about this beyond just the story points. Like, yes, you can assign story points, but let's think holistically about the timelines, the dependencies, the roadmap, the backlog grooming. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, not just the story points assignment. So one, she was able to pull together a bunch of external experts into a long form roundtable. So that was one video. Then we created snippets from each of those videos and gave them to the speakers. And so they were able to promote that on their own LinkedIn or their own Twitter. Then we did a community post in our owned community with a takeaway, again, noting the credibility of the experts, and then also had that ability to link to some of the other things in our products that can help you eliminate the anti-patterns. And so that was yet another asset that we could use and point to. And then we were also able to take that video and embed it into an SEO focused article around story points and estimation, and then update that article with additional insights. So that ability to put it, like it was truly omni-channel marketing. It was a mix of thought leadership and going all the way into that, product mindset and connecting. Here's these concepts from a thought leadership perspective, all the way down to how that shows up in our products. And it was highly relevant to the audience. And it was a timely conversation. And then the fact that it was a little bit of a turnaround story of like, hey guys, let's talk about what this gets wrong. That was actually like sprinkles on the donut for us. Like the meaty donut was the round table and all the assets it generated. And then the sprinkles was kind of the turnaround story. So that was one of my favorite campaigns. I think that just the fact that we also were able to work across product marketing, across product, and then across industry experts, and then across multiple areas of marketing for a truly omni-channel campaign.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's like a masterclass in an integrated omni-channel campaign. Like you could present this in business school. So I love that example. The fact that you were able to have this thought leadership campaign, but still tie it back to your product and brand is just a very, very clever way. But I want to highlight something that you talked about, was turning that roundtable into many different assets that is, placed everywhere. That's difficult to do. It requires a lot of people and a lot of tools, and video is not easy to work with. So I'm curious how you guys did that for that campaign.
Sure. So I'll talk about how we did it for that campaign, and then I'll talk about what we're experimenting with internally now with AI. So I actually think this is a great use case for AI. I have my own hot takes about AI, which is a separate conversation, but actually for that one, we have some video editor that we've worked with. It's a vendor, it's called Shootsta. They have a platform, you can upload your videos with the briefs. And so basically we had someone manage that process. They went through and pulled some timestamps. So that was very manual to have somebody like watch the video and note the timestamps and then upload it to the platform and then say, okay, at these timestamps, clip it and add these bumpers, right? That was very manual. What we're experimenting with now, so we actually just did another Agile and DevOps event called Unleash that happened in December. We're in the process of pulling a bunch of snippets from the recorded sessions, and we're using AI tools to do that. So that has been a game changer. Like, it's not perfect. A human still has to review them. Some of the clips, it's like, why did it pull it there? And like, you cut off a word. Can we scoot it just like 1 second or 2 seconds? So we're still in the early stages of this, but that ability to upload, a long form video, in this case, we did a couple that were 10 to 15 minute sessions. They were intentionally short and focused. So uploading that, asking the AI tool to give us 5 to 7 clips so that we can pick the 2 or 3 that are working. So I actually think that's a great use for AI. We're looking at a number of tools right now and experimenting. We've got some free trials. There's a few that we've upgraded to the standard, the pro, to kind of see how that's working. So we're in the process of building out those workflows. But yeah, I would say this is go look at your AI tools. Ping me if you want to know which tools we looked at. I don't feel confident endorsing a tool right now publicly, but if you want to DM me for some information about what we've been experimenting with, I'm happy to share that in DMs.
Very cool. I think what you just explained, a lot of teams are identifying with, just the pain of having to do more with less. I'm going to very, very, very shamelessly plug Goldcast here for just 1 second. Anyone watching here also feeling this pain, click on this ticker. We have a solution for this specifically, to repurpose event content into many different formats. Do check it out. We have a trial. Check it out. That's all. That's it for shameless plugging. Thank you, Ashley, for sharing that amazing example. But Katie, I'd love to hear about your sweet campaign.
I've used the Content Lab, highly recommend, and I will talk about it a little bit on how we're using it. So I always like to base some campaigns, obviously not all campaigns, on things that happen every year, whether that's Valentine's Day, which I just mentioned, or the start of a new year. So every year ThoughtSpot releases name a number. This year it was 10. Last year it was 7. Trends and predictions. So data analytics and AI trends and predictions. So we do that every year. And what we found in the past years is great. We released an ebook and we did a webinar. But this year it's like, okay, what can we do? What more can we do? And it's all around that content repurposing. And so basing a campaign on a time of year or something that people can relate to is works super well. I mean, it really works for us, and people, it not only fits at all parts of the playground, not the funnel from customers to demand creation and demand capture, but it's really all encompassing. And what we did is we got industry experts, customers, and even prospects. We pulled them as an ABM campaign. That is huge. So if you have prospects and you want to close them, you're like, hey, do you want to give us your opinion on X? And you looping in that sales leader on the side works wonders. But this year we're like, how do we reuse this content? So we created a landing page that was SEO, very SEO heavy. So huge landing page. I brought it up and I'll ping it in the chat if you guys want to see it. We had a PDF as well, so we could use that from a demand perspective. So we're doing that on all channels, advertising, and we're using content syndication vendors, you name it. We're really going all out here. And then we're also using it from a snippet standpoint. So that webinar that we had, we used the Content Lab to get social videos to then promote the ebook. So that's a little bit. And then from an executive perspective, they're using these pieces of content more from the ebook and putting it into presentations that they're going to customer events on. And so they're telling a story, and it's really about telling that story widely and then fitting it to various different pieces of the funnel. I wrote so many different emails based on, hey, you're a prospect at this particular stage, or hey, you're a customer at this particular stage, and really using that content, but promoting it differently. And I think that's underrated. It's really easy to just write one email to promote one thing. But if you're changing what you want the person to really get out of it in that promotional email, is super underrated. So that is my tip. And I see some questions in the chat, which I will get to.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of parallels between the campaign that you shared and also the campaign that Ashley shared. There's lots of taking a long form asset and making it kind of snackable and using it for different, audiences and different purposes. So that sounds like a trend or like a tip or trick that other marketers should follow, because it's a recipe for being able to do more with less.
Absolutely. We're a demand gen team of, four now. And so we have lots, and we're covering 3 different product lines in 3 different segments. So it's wild. So you have to.
That is a slim team.
Yes.
Yeah. Ashley, I'm curious, how big is your team?
So we're organized by markets, and we cover basically 4 different markets. We've got our products into each different, basically into different portfolios for the markets. So the team sizes vary, and then the skill sets on those teams vary. We're actually in the process, we're going through a bit of a evolution on how we're doing that content. So my team is actually brand new right now. It's 2. Someone actually just moved over, which this could be a whole separate conversation around. Someone from the sales enablement side actually just moved over onto my team. So she now sits in the lifecycle team with me working on content. So yeah, currently my team is 2. I'm hiring for a couple of others and then working through the process to figure out, do we need more internal headcount? Do we need agency support? Can we streamline some of this with AI tools? Do we partner more with like the vendors who are helping us with our large scale events, for example? So we're going through an evolution on this. I think the other thing I'll say about this, to Katie's point, is thinking about that long tail distribution in the beginning, not afterwards. And so that's another huge mindset shift, again, from like the playground standpoint and the intent standpoint, that like super tactically, if you have a presentation and you only refer to the brand or the product name in the beginning, and then after that, you refer to it as it or our product or they, no one knows what that is. And it makes it really hard to cut the videos down, because the only place you mention what it is at the beginning. Or you'll have people presenting and they'll say, yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, now I can't use that clip because I don't know what you mentioned earlier. So instead, this is a perfect conversation where if I were to say, if we agree that people think more like a funnel, or people don't think in a funnel, they travel more like a playground going up, down, and sideways, then we realize that we actually need to think about omni-channel distribution. Versus if I phrase it as we were just talking about, we need to think about omni-channel distribution. You have no idea what we were just talking about, right? So even some of those mindset shifts, same thing, like don't frame up the first video in a series as, in part 1, I'm going to talk about X. Well, now you're stuck. Like now, now you can't use that video on its own, versus saying, in today's video, we're going to talk about this concept. If you're unfamiliar with this concept, go read this blog post about it at the conceptual level, right? Or the strategic or tactical. And that gives you more opportunities to link. It gives your SDRs more opportunity to be like, hey, I noticed that you read this conceptual level asset, which defines the problem space. You might also find these 3 videos about strategic or tactical implementation to be helpful. And then that also gives you more flexibility to go up or down. Again, you'll notice that like, that's not a funnel thing. You're not suddenly in the consideration phase because you learned about the problem space. You might just now need to understand the criteria for the solution space. And so treating your assets at different depths and intents allows your SDRs, allows your campaign managers to then mix and match those in a bunch of different ways. So those are some super tactical things that I've seen as well. Where if you're thinking about that long-term or omni-channel distribution, you have to pull that all the way back into how you create the content.
That's a very, very good tip, because if you don't have those sort of speaker guidelines on how you want to present something in your video, then, you know, you're making repurposing content that much more difficult and that much more resource incumbent. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go in and actually open up our next poll before we go into our next segment. All right. So our next poll is, what I want to know is, what types of content do you find most effective for demand generation? So for our audience, do you find blog posts, long form videos, case studies, live webinars and events, or infographics? What is working for you guys? We want to know. So our next segment is called The Perfect Pairing. Give me 1 second as I pull that video up. All right, so the perfect pairing is about strategies to ensure how sales and marketing can work better together. Ashley, I'm going to go to you for this one first. What's your perspective on how to create the perfect pairing between marketing and sales? And Katie, I know that you mentioned a few tips earlier, so I'm going to go back to you later. But Ashley, curious your thoughts here.
I just want to plus one to Katie's tips first of like, talk to them, treat them as your peers, behave as one team. Like, don't hate each other. Step one, love each other. But I do want to dig into something specifically around social selling. So I actually think social selling is a misnomer, because the way most people use it is they basically like reach out and they're like, hello, Ashley, I see that you're, insert my title. Do you need, insert something about generating revenue? Here's what our company does, right? But if you actually look at the low barrier to entry now for tools like LinkedIn and platforms like LinkedIn, particularly for B2B SaaS, your audience is probably hanging out there. You can find your ideal customer profile there. You can engage with them in the comments. Like, you can share content that they can engage in. You can tag other people to talk about that. All of that builds trust. It builds conversation. It positions you as an expert in both the problem space and the solution space. And it can position you as an expert in the tactics to implement those. So it's not just super excited to talk about Jira Dark Mode. Like, yeah, Jira Dark Mode, it was very requested. We sent it out. That's great. But what if I started talking to you about how Atlassian does product launches? And I share with you a template for how we tier out the different product launches, right? What if that actually turns out to be something that you could get right now in Confluence for free? That's a much more compelling use case than just, hello, have you checked out Confluence, right? So I've seen this work a number of times, and I'm a marketer, so I'm coming at this from the marketing side, but there have been plenty of times where people in my network have said, hey, what tools are you using for project management? And they'll have a poll, and it's all my competitors. And I'm like, listen, and I'll pop in and I'll be like, I know I'm a little biased, but like, gotta say, Atlassian tools, that's what I use, right? And I'll fully call out. I'll be like, I'm biased, I'm a marketer at Atlassian, but here's how we're using our own tools. I've had other situations where I think I did that on somebody. It's a friendly person who we go back and forth all the time. And I was like highly offended that you didn't include Atlassian. And she's like, all right, fair enough. You know, I should have done that, right? Somebody else replied in that thread and was like, hey, I've actually been super curious about Atlassian tools. Like, marketer, come bless my feed. And I was like, oh, you want a marketer? You want me to sell you something? You want me to market to you? Oh, I will do that, right? So what I did, I went to her LinkedIn profile. I skimmed it. She was a program manager. And so I went and I pulled a couple of our templates and a couple of our articles that are specific to program managers. And I said, hey, here's a few features that you might find interesting. Here's a few resources that you might find interesting. And fun fact, we have all of our tools are free for up to 10 users if you want to give it a shot. And she DM'd me. She was like, you have blown me away. Like, all of these resources are relevant. These features are super helpful. And then she actually was like, she worked for the Project Management Institute conference. And she was like, would you be willing to come speak to like at our conference. And I was like, you want someone from Atlassian to come stand on stage in front of our target audience and talk about our, like, of course we will make that happen, right? So I actually introduced her to another colleague of mine, the Lean Six Sigma certified person. I was like, I'm actually not the right person for this. Let me introduce you to my colleague, right? So all of that, none of that gets tracked in Salesforce. None of that shows up in Marketo or HubSpot, right? It's hard to track that. And that's part of the reason why the social selling stuff gets difficult, because it does result in these super high value interactions, but they happen in the comments on somebody else's post via a personal account that goes to the DMs, that then maybe they click directly, or they go and they Google us, or, you know, whatever happens. Maybe I pass them off to sales. So I get it that it's hard because of the attribution piece. But I've had several people. I had somebody reach out the other day and was like, hey, Ashley, I'm looking to learn more about this. Can you introduce me to someone from your sales team? They could have gone to the website and clicked contact sales, but for whatever reason, they trusted me more. And they were like, I'm just going to ask you to sell me something. And so I came back to them with resources and got them connected, right? So that's my perfect pairing, is basically social selling and enabling your sales reps on social, your subject matter experts on social. We do this a lot because we sell to engineering teams. So as a marketer, I have like zero credibility, but all my engineers have credibility. So enabling them to be present and in those conversations.
That's a great tip. Katie, any thoughts there?
No, I love that. This brings to mind how many times I've been brought into demos. Like, hey, you're in marketing. I'm talking to someone in marketing. Can you do a demo? It's like, well, I can, but like, let me figure out a little bit more. But yeah, social selling is it. Those polls, love that. And I also love when you kind of like, it's like a little like dramatic on LinkedIn when you see in the comments, like all of that, but it's fun and it's all in fun. It's not too serious. And I think that's what's great about LinkedIn. It's never it's all fun and games, right? Like I like to say, we're not saving lives in my particular job. But anyway, yeah, I love that, Ashley. Great tip.
Awesome. And now I'm going to share that poll just to see what types of content our audience is finding most effective for demand gen. And it's definitely a landslide that live webinars and events are winning. It's very interesting.
I actually have a question. I want to hear maybe from the people on the line. Do you think that live webinars and events are working because they're out front? You know, everyone's seeing, hey, we're hosting or we're sponsoring, I don't know, Snowflake Summit or whatever, or hey, you have this webinar. Like, why do you think that is? Because I've been, you know, diversification in your mix is so important, but we always come back to live webinars and events. I mean, at least personally, I do.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I'd love if anybody in the chat has anything to share, or Ashley, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah.
Mary, yeah.
I was actually going to say, can we step back and ask what we mean by effective? Because one interesting thing is that in the first poll, people were saying they're most concerned with awareness and consideration. But then I assume live webinars and events are actually leading to closed won deals, which is a different conversation. So to Mary's point, if you're willing to speak to somebody at a live event, like you go to a booth, you know you're going to get sold at the booth. So you're already probably in a buy intent headspace. If you attend a company webinar, again, you're likely to get sold and or put into a nurture campaign or something like that. So you're probably already in a buy intent headspace. So I would be curious to know, when people were answering this question, what do they mean by effective? Because I agree that like blog posts are probably not very effective unless it's literally a top 5 use cases for this tool, or how your product compares to 3 other tools. If you don't have like a comparison landing page, if you use blog posts for that, like I'd be super curious to know what people were thinking when they answered that question.
When I had thought of this poll, the effective metric I was looking at was pipeline generating.
As you should, right, Kelly?
Right.
That's what I assume too. I mean, I assume, either pipeline generation or closed won or sign up or a trial, whatever metric that is for your organization. But yeah.
Yeah, Stephanie's saying that our most successful channel is always going to be the feet on the ground, face-to-face selling B2B. Seems like webinar is the next best thing, giving folks the opportunity to get their specific questions answered in real time. That makes sense.
Yeah. And back to this funnel thing. I mean, I run our webinar strategy and I align to where people are and maybe their intent. So we have like a live demo program. We have top of funnel webinars, but that no shame to anyone's writing blogs. I think blogs are important. You know, people should find you organically through SEO. And that's something that we heavily focus on. They actually just published a blog about 15 marketing metrics that you should track. But it came from me and I'll post it because you know, it's all in a shameless plug here, but go ahead and check it out.
Thanks, Katie. All right, I'm going to move into our last segment, and this segment is called Donut Dedications. We'll play the video. All right, so before our donut bakery closes for the afternoon, it's time for our donut dedications. I'd love for each of our guests here to give 2 donut dedication shout outs, you know, one to an individual that's in the B2B marketing demand gen space that has inspired them, and another to a brand that they've admired for their marketing strategies across a variety of channels. Katie, I'm going to go with you first.
Great. Okay, perfect. First B2B marketer that I'd like to call out, Brendan Ritz. He is our director of marketing operations. I've actually worked with him at 2 companies now. He is a true rock star. I always like to say this, demand gen, and as close as you should be to your marketing or to your sales team, you should as well be to your marketing ops team. They are unsung heroes. We love working with that team, and they are just always down to drop everything to drive some pipeline when I have this crazy idea. So Brendan Ritz, you are a rock star if you're listening to this. And then brands I admire. I have a few B2B. Figma comes to mind. Amplitude also comes to mind, but I'm actually going to pull from the B2C space. Jack Moose is a designer brand, purses, you name it, but their marketing is just so unique. They really leaned into the CGI, things that I always thought that was CGI is so weird, but the way they've done it is so tasteful. Like their bags going down the highway, super blown up, and you know it's fake, but it looks real. It's crazy. And then just their creative director, he is just a mastermind. So a lot of respect for that brand just in general and everything that they're doing. And what I also appreciate is that they're very realistic and real with their marketing too. So it's not fake, you know, love that. So realistic. Anyway, those are my 2.
Thank you. And Ashley, who are your 2 donut dedications for today?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a couple of folks who are in the marketing to marketers space so that it's relevant for this audience. But one, Gwen Lafage. So she is actually the VP of brand at Cinch. And it's funny to name a VP of brand for a demand generation discussion, but I actually think she's done a great job uniting brand and demand. And I think that, again, to that conversation about demand gen versus demand capture, I think she's done an awesome job building that bridge between brand, sales, demand gen, and really showing up and building that. She's actually on, if you've seen the series from Victor, I think is his name. Anyways, the Demand Gen Wars, where he's doing a whole Survivor thing. Gwen is in that, and I think that's so cool. So I also met her. She's super smart. And she has shown up at a couple of events in full on Cinch wear. And so you can find her. And so Gwen, if you're listening, shout out to you, donut dedication. And then for a marketing company, and I'll do this in the vein of the social selling stuff that I mentioned, the Dream Data team. So they've actually done a whole social selling challenge for this first quarter. They've been sharing videos about it, talking with their sales team, with their customer success team, with their marketing team, with their execs. They've done a whole blitz, and then they're going through and talking about that. They host running events at the conferences that they attend. And so again, it's that chance to build relationships, meet other people, meet them, I think that's super smart the way that they've done that. And then just from a branding standpoint, like several of the members of their team have kind of built like a personal brand that shows up online and offline, and that also ties directly to the company brand in terms of the color palette or the vibe, right? Like they do a twins thing, which is hilarious, where they accidentally show up dressed the same as like their CEO or their CFO. And so they have little pictures, and it ties to the brand. So that's my kind of brand shout out. We're not customers, like they're not paying me or in any way. I genuinely have enjoyed interacting with their team in a variety of places.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen any of that social selling content yet, but I'm very interested. We've got a lot of questions. We won't be able to go through all of them. So audience, do go into the Q&A tab and upvote the questions that you want us to cover. I'll start from the most upvoted down. But first question is coming in from David. Let's see. Great reuse cases. How much content is planned out for each quarter? Ashley, I'll start with you.
That is your favorite marketing answer is going to be, it depends. So one thing that we have started to do is we have market events that happen in like Q2, and then we have our flagship event in Q4. And so we're actually starting to move to more of a content kind of cycle where we're able to reuse the content from the market events. And then for more of our enterprise audiences, we do campaigns planned around the wave, the MQ, like some of those bigger analyst reports that take a ton of time to put together, and they end up with customer use cases, they end up with product stats, user stats, etc. So those make for really good opportunities to do campaigns from an enterprise standpoint. And then we do, again, this is hard because from like an SEO standpoint, depending on what we're seeing in the market, depending on conversations we're having, we can scale that up or down. And so that is another avenue for us. So yeah, in terms of like how much content is planned, that's a really hard question to answer, because as we're looking at kind of what's working and places where we have gaps, either in the conversation or in the audience journey, we can then invest more or less in either net new or repurposing. So yeah, I don't actually have a good answer for that, because it varies and we take a pretty broad view of what counts as content.
I agree. It's a hard nut to crack. Personally, just to kind of build on top of what Ashley does, we do quarterly like a content mapping exercise with our content team. So we're identifying where the gaps that we're seeing in pipeline, and then we're kind of doing a work back and seeing what's feasible with our team size. Obviously, you can't boil the ocean. And so really identifying where we need that. How it looks today for us at ThoughtSpot is that bottom of funnel, like buyer's guide. So obviously the funnel is dead, but bottom of funnel, people need that to, reinforce their decision as they're going through the sales cycle. So we identified like that more bottom of funnel is somewhere where we've over indexed on top of funnel. So we needed to kind of fill back kind of that. So we had content at every stage of the journey.
Cool. Thank you. Our next question is about content repurposing, reusing content. When it comes to content lab / reusing content, do either of you adapt snippets as part of sales sequences?
Yes. Love pulling quotes into sales sequences, particularly from either an ebook, like, hey, this is like the top line one. And typically I'm working with our content team to identify that. They wrote it, they know it the best. So they're giving that to me. But from a webinar perspective, we're using that, like, especially if they didn't attend the webinar. That's huge on like what you missed, and trying to build that FOMO, I think is really important. And something I always like to remind our sellers is like, hey, we are in business, but these people that we're selling to, although it's B2B, they are human. So just like send them, hey, we missed you. Hey, this is what you missed. Said by who? Here's the on-demand recording.
Yeah, Ashley, I'm curious if you're using repurposed content for sales too.
Yeah, and plus one to the way Katie said it in terms of like, here's what attendees of the event had to say. You can still catch it on demand or whatever. Yeah, I think we're similar tactics to Katie in terms of here's what you missed, or here were the top takeaways, or here's what attendees had to say. That works out really well.
Oh, what content and syndication vendors? Yes. So we kind of mix here at HotSpot on content syndication vendors. I've used a ton over the years. Foundry, Madison Logic, DemandWorks all come to mind. But really, it doesn't matter. Like what I look for is audience concentration. How many, like we sell to data leaders and product leaders. And so I'm really looking at what personas they have. And also you have to give them an ABM list. If you're not giving them an ABM list, you're doing it way wrong. Don't let them just go for it. Give them a list of like, hey, these are the accounts that I'm looking for. I am always in partnership with sales on that. So we're driving that interest from the top of funnel. But yeah, and then also newsletters. Newsletters are underrated. Industry newsletters, huge. And I'm always looking at that. TDLR is one that I'm recently looked at, and I think they're fairly new. So if you're in more of the data space, could be interesting.
We have a bunch based on the different markets. So we've got work management, we've got ITSM, we have Agile and DevOps, we have enterprise and transformations. So we've got a list that is too large to mention here. I think, though, to Katie's point, the audience concentration is key. So, for example, like one of the ones that we've talked with a number of times or used a number of times, IDG, which also owns TechTarget, and they have like CIO.com, CTO.com, they have a bunch of different segments. So that's another one where we would match the specific asset with the specific segment of the audience. And they've got good segmentation in terms of seniority, in terms of geography, like if we wanted to localize stuff, in terms of like industry or company size. So I think to Katie's point, the bigger issue is like the audience concentration. And then, yeah, the newsletter thing is also a really good way to do that if you've got somebody that hits the right audience and so you want to share with them. One other thing that I'll mention, this is like super niche for our stuff. It might be relevant if you're marketing to engineers, but there are sites like 𝐃𝐸𝐬𝐬 that are basically aggregation sites that will allow you to republish your content for free. And you can also get a backlink to the original piece of content. So we use 𝐃𝐸𝐬𝐬 pretty frequently for second run content. Like maybe we'll publish something as either an SEO article or as like a blog post, and then we'll republish, wait a week or two, and then republish it on 𝐃𝐸𝐬𝐬 with the backlink, and it just says, originally published on with the backlink. You can also use LinkedIn articles as a syndication for free for the author. So again, if you go to my profile, you'll see there's a few places where I've republished, and you'll notice the difference. Like if it's me and it's original article, it's a stock image. If it's something that I've written for Atlassian and published on my personal post, you'll see like a custom illustration. And then if you just scroll down, you'll see the text that says originally published on Work Life, which is the Atlassian blog. So that's those are two free ones. I'm sure there's more depending on your industry, but don't forget about like second and third run content on those aggregators for free.
That's super smart. The LinkedIn one is a good one. Awesome. Well, that's all the questions that we have time for today. We are going to go through answering the questions in the unanswered questions after the event. So coming back in afterwards to check out the unanswered questions. But I want to thank both Katie and Ashley so much for their time today and sharing so many tips and tricks. I learned a lot today, and I hope everyone in the audience did too. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you, audience, for joining us for this hour. But have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.